G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. We're bringing on a repeat offender, a guest that's been on beforehand. Welcome back on, Rob Flux. How you doing?
Aaron, mate, I'm fantastic. You've stolen my own line. I use a repeat offender all the time for a whole bunch of people who keep coming to my events over and over.
You keep calling other people repeat offenders. We'll put that tag on you, mate. But it's great to have you back. I know we've been lining up a chat for a while. You've been a busy man, and for good reason, because when I read that you are on a mission to help 1,000 people get financially free, I immediately want to go there and go, tell me more about this, because this is the stuff that when I read, my ears prick up. And I'm like, what is that mission about? And what does financial freedom mean to these 1,000 people?
Well, I'll tell you what the mission's about. I came about running my business through a passion project. And along the way in building that passion project, I found that helping people along the way really drove me and inspired me. And I had a coach at the time who I taught him a key phrase that he'd never came across before, and it was called a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And this is something that is so wildly out there that most people can't fathom that it can be achieved, but you internally know that it's within your core skill set that you can actually do it and you've got the drive to get there. So I gave him the term BHAG, and then he immediately turned that on me and said, "What's your BHAG?" And I went, and so I initially set the goal of 100 people financially free, and he went, "Not big enough." And so, mate, I set this is going back about 5 years ago now. I set the goal for 1,000 people by the year 2030. So I actually put a deadline on this because that's when you're setting goals. It's we've all heard of SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So I put the time bound on it. By the year 2030, I've got 70 people that I can count that have actually achieved that so far, and there's a bucket load along the way. And it takes time to actually get there. So I know that there's a lot more in the pipe, but my mission is to get my message out far and wide, because the more people I can get my message to, the more chance I've got to actually achieve that goal.
Perfect. That's what we're doing today. And I feel like that 70 is like, if you're watching this, it's like there's exponential growth charts where it starts small, and then naturally in the last few years is when it's going to really start to kind of kick up into that next gear as well, mate. But I'm very excited. Look, anyone that hasn't listened to our first chat, I recommend you go back and listen to that as well. But when you think about where you were in 2012, 5 mates around a kitchen, chewing the fat, to where it is now, running events around the country, for example, as well. I think, what did you say, how many events that you run annually?
We run in the vicinity of 45 events annually. So pretty much every weekend of the year, we're running an event somewhere around the country, predominantly Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. And then a couple of times a year, we do, I guess, national conferences that we do via webinars that kind of allow everyone to get involved in the process.
Yeah. And for me to organise a few hours for a book event took a mammoth effort from our team. So I can only imagine what organising weekly events would look like around the country and virtually, mate. But well done to you. Look, this is going back a few months, but you organised your developer launchpad event, which I think we're trying to get on, but you're super busy in the lead up to that. Tell me, what did that event entail, and what were the key outcomes that came out of that event that weekend?
It was a one-day event where I basically did a lay of the land with regards to, firstly, what is property development? Secondly, what is the opportunity that's sitting in front of people and why? What are the market forces that are actually sitting behind us? And I guess my prediction on where the market is actually going, noting, giant asterisks, I'm not a property economist and I can't give financial advice. But I think personally, looking at a thing called market drivers, everyone else looks at market indicators, and indicators something that's already happened. So auction clearance rates, days on market, they're all things that have happened. Median house prices, they're things that have happened. Where I'm looking at, where's the market going? Why is it moving forward? What's the infrastructure being spent? Where's the population going? What's happening with inflation and interest rates and all that sort of. When I look at all the drivers as to what's forcing the market forward, I've got 16 of those drivers. I share with my audience how to interpret those drivers. And based on everything that I'm seeing, mate, we are going to the moon.
Okay, which when I speak to our clients that are looking in the building development game as well, if they're not surrounding yourself with someone like them, they're getting their sources from media, which says this is a bad time to develop, this is a bad time to borrow, for example. But what we're going to do is take the essence of that course that you ran and go there, because I think the first point that you made, which is what is property development, I feel this is the one that we just need to start here. If you're looking 101 from a definition, let's start here, because I wrote a few and you and I had a chat and you're like, I don't think that really fits the definition. Let's just go through kind of what I hear, and then let's go to yours. So,
well, I'll give you a blanket definition,
go for
and
it.
then we can look at the individual strategies to sit with underneath that and to see whether or not they have the impact, whether they're going to move the dial, right? So property development is anything where you can force value onto the property through your own sweat, equity, skills, or knowledge. So everything from a tiny little reno flip all the way through to, building high-rise developments, they are all property development, but not all of them will move the dial.
Okay, great.
So, but the point of it is that property development, because we're forcing value on with our knowledge and our skills, we can manufacture profit as opposed to waiting for the market to do the heavy lifting for us. So we can do that much faster.
Yeah,
that's the definition.
This feels very active versus buy and hold. That feels very passive, for example.
Correct.
And I think one thing that I read in your bio is you were like, the buy and hold strategy could be a slower burn and it could work, but you just weren't willing to play the waiting game.
Well, it actually does work, and I've got personal experience on that. So I did 20 years of buy and hold. I bought my first house at 18, my first investment property at 21. I owned my first house outright at 24. I did buy and hold negative gearing, like we're all been indoctrinated to do. I did that for 20 years, right? And for when I was going to turn 38, mathematically, I was retired. I was financially free, but regrettably, after not 20 years, but 19, at the age of 37, I got divorced. Yep. And instead of actually financial freedom, I had to put all my toys, pack them up, put them into the center, redistribute all of that, and I had to start again. So what took me 20 years to do, I then went, how do I do that again without waiting 20 years? That passive approach and letting the market do the heavy lifting made it works. And for some people, that's all that suits their risk profile, that suits their time profile, and that's a fantastic strategy. But for those of you who've got more drive, for those of you who have more tenacity, for those of you, I guess, who have less time on your hands to wait, we have no choice but to force value into the property. And when I learned the property development process, what I did in 20 years, I did in 6. And now that I'm, I guess, I'll loosely say 15-year veteran in that field, I could probably do it again this time round in 3.
Here we go. This is why, if you're listening, this is why we bring people on like Rob, for example. If we're talking about shortcuts to success, we're not taking shortcuts necessarily. We're saying shortcuts to success because success leaves clues, and someone like Rob is going to tell you the how and show you personal experience. So if you're listening, tune in because we've got some gold that's going to come your way. Now let's go through this. Look, we said buy, renovate, keep, sell. You said, look, these are great, but they're not going to move the needle, for example. We've got some revalue.
Well, they make money. So let's be really clear. They make money. And what they do is they consume time, they consume resources, both financial and also emotional and time resources. And at the end of it, you are going to absolutely make money. And the temptation is to just keep doing that because I make money. But what we end up having is we swap our day job for our property development job, and we have to keep doing those projects over and over and over to keep the paycheck coming in because they don't scale, right? And by scaling, if you do a reno flip, then once that money is in the bank and you want to retire, you want to be financially free, you start to use that money to live. Now the money gets depleted. You have to do another one of those projects to top it up. And so all you do is swap one job for another job. And I guess work ethic is I want to be the ultimate lazy man. I want to sit back and not have to work. So what are the things I have to do in order to do that? So my encouragement is do something that you can start small, learn the skills, but that strategy is scalable. So you can start a little one, do a medium-sized one, and then a big one until you can reapply the lessons from the previous one up and up and up. And that's the smart way to do that until the profits that you make are large enough that you can actually keep a property owned outright. And that's the goal. Because what we've done is we've actually used that investment mindset of long-term holding an asset for both capital growth and cash flow, but we've manufactured that through the property development process. So we get it at a wholesale rate, not a retail rate.
Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I could rattle off all these options. So you do a duplex, you build a granny flat, you do a 3-pack, for example. You go more sophisticated, so you got a development site, you go through DAs, for example. You build a small block, you build a 6 block, start to move into medium density, for example, and people going, whoa, like money, time, mindset usually become the limitations here, for example. How are you breaking through that to go, you are capable of this? Because I'm assuming in this community, and how many people have got in your community? 15,000, I think?
No, 25,500. We are growing exponentially, my friend. The word on the street is that we're actually doing a good job. And yeah, organic growth in our business is amazing. And it's because what we're teaching people is a lot of the ones that you touched on, there are key ones in there that are on that path to the scalability. And so I guess if I was to give someone, I guess the ultimate answer, you want to think about, who do I want to be when I grow up, right? What's the developer of the future look like? And then what is the small version of that I can do today that's going to give me a small amount of skills that will take me on that path? And so we're looking for the kinds of strategies that will help us to do that. So there are some of those development strategies that are scalable and some of them that aren't. And if we are strategic with that and we stick to one path, then that's going to make job number 2 or development number 2 so much easier, because we had to do lots of learning on number 1, but number 2, most of those lessons we can reapply.
Okay.
And so we want to make the path as clean and smooth as humanly possible. Fundamentally, there's only 2 paths that work that are scalable. So a subdivision path and a multi-res path. And I'll use multi-res as a grouping. So townhouses is, I guess, a subset, and apartments is another subset. But they both have I guess they fit in that multi-res capacity. With both of those paths, I can do a 1 into 2. I can reapply that to 1 into 4. I can reapply that into 1 into 6, 1 into 10, 1 into 50. So what we're looking is, do we either scale out or do we scale up, depending upon which particular trajectory we've had? That's the secret here, is choose one of those baseline strategies and stick to it. And if you can do that, you're going to get out. And from a scalability perspective, subdivisions, you can scale all the way out to building an entire street. You can build an entire suburb. You can build an entire city. Okay. So I've got one perfect example of that. A gentleman by the name of Maha Sinathambi, who
Nice.
You're laughing because you know who he is, but a lot of people out there don't, mate. He's done one development project in his entire life, and he built the city of Springfield out near Ipswich, I guess in southeast Queensland, and that one project has made him a billionaire and is largely a subdivision, right? And so what he's put on those lots once he's done that is, I guess, then the next part. So some places he's put houses, some places he's put shops, and some places he's put universities and schools and all sorts of things, but he's built an entire city. So that's how scalable that is. But you can equally scale your townhouse projects and equally scale your apartment projects. But land subdivisions and townhouses scale out, apartments scale up.
Have you seen one work particularly better than the other?
I'm going to say they are both equal, but they both have pros and cons that fit everyone's personality profile differently. There's some simple litmus tests that you can put on yourself to go, which one suits me? And they're just asking questions about your own personal risk profile, asking questions about your, I guess, your financial situations and that sort of thing, to go, what am I starting with at the front, right? Because some of us actually have a reasonable nest egg and actually can scale, but we don't have the risk profile to want to do, I guess, the townhouse or multi-res type approach. And so and some of us have no choice. But simple question, how long can you wait for your first payday, right? Now, if you can only wait, I guess, 6 months to a year, then doing a townhouse project that takes 2 years to run probably isn't your answer, right? But if you don't have cash flow issues and that sort of thing, and you can afford to wait, well, maybe it is. So there's lots of little questions like that I call money rules. And if you ask yourself the money rules, what it's going to tend to do is it's going to rule out one of those paths, which means that the one that's remaining is the one that you should lean on.
Awesome. Thanks very much. 25,000 people are subscribed to what you believe your philosophy, which means there's plenty more people that are sitting on the fringe waiting to jump in as well. And you and I are very fortunate that we get to look under the hoods of a lot of people's portfolios. We get to speak to a lot of these people and get to know their intimate plans, aspirations, which they don't even share with some of their close friends or family, right? So we're in their inner sanctum, which is such an incredible part of our gigs as well. So take me through, what is and it's hard to say a typical community member looks like, but what are these financial goals? They go, look, financial freedom to me means, and what type of goals and aspirations do they have?
Mate, that is probably a fantastic question from a perception in the community. So the perception is in the community, a lot of people have been sold the dream that the fancy house and the fancy car and the Learjet and that sort of thing, that is financial freedom. They've all been sold on that goal, but in reality, it's actually much, much simpler. It's about looking at your current lifestyle today, looking at what are the expenses that it's costing you to put food on the table, fuel in the car, send the kids to school, keep a roof over your head. What are those expenses? And can I get enough passive income to pay those? If I can get enough passive income to pay my current expenses, I can continue living the current lifestyle that I've got today. And if I do that, all of a sudden I buy the most valuable commodity that there is, and that is time. I no longer have to have a job. Now, at that point, what I do with my time is completely up to me. If I choose to keep using that time to keep adding value to myself, I can actually then go for those lifestyle goals, and I can have the fancy car and I can have the fancy house, but I have to have gone through this first milestone in order to get there. And so the challenge that I see most people come in is that they think that the goal is so far away that when they start striving towards it, that it looks too far away, and so they give up. So we need to give them something that is just within reach. And if it's just within reach, then they're going to feel like they can actually stretch and get there. And when they get to that one, then the next one is just within reach, and grab that again. And so hence, look at these as milestones, not destinations.
Thanks very much. I feel like, a lot of people sit on the outer going, these developers are the ones that have, big, deep pockets, for example. The banks have got, line of credits for them as well. But you and I know that, they walk amongst us in terms of, you wouldn't know that they're onto their 5th, 6th project, for example. They live a fairly modest or humble lifestyle because, that's what keeps money in the bank as well. And they've got their feet on the ground, which means they're trying to provide a better future for their family. Not necessarily it's the expensive belt or car that, that are the hallmarks of quote unquote wealth as well.
Yeah. And a lot of us tend to be asset rich and cash flow poor. So especially if you're doing a typical investment path where you buy an asset and it might be negatively geared, the capital growth works. It's going to build you an asset base, and that's going to be worth, and you're going to be a millionaire on paper, but it's still negatively geared, and you're still tied to your job, and you must service that loan in order to keep that thing afloat. it takes a while before that hits the hockey stick of, sell down an asset, pay off the debt on the other one, and then it becomes financially able to wash its own face.
Yeah.
Whereas in property development, we can accelerate that and I guess own a property outright in very short period of time.
That was the exact sentiment. I had someone, I think 7 or 8 properties, and they said, "Look, mate, I've got 7 or 8 properties on paper, but I don't feel any richer." I'm like, yeah, most people would have killed to be in that situation, that scenario where they've built a decent portfolio, but the sentiment is, I don't actually feel like I've got more money in my bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can give, for those people who are investors, I can give them a couple of little questions to ask themselves on a regular basis that might help them to reassess that circumstance. So fundamentally, there's only 2 reasons why you're going to invest. So this is buy and hold, okay? Number 1, capital growth. Number 2, cash flow. And you should have had a strategy and an intention in mind when you actually purchase that property, that it's one or the other. So when was the last time that they assessed their property to see if it's achieving that goal? Right? So on a regular basis, you should be asking yourself, is it currently meeting its intended purpose? And irrespective of that answer, then the next question to ask yourself is, what is the likelihood it's going to continue doing the same? And then the last answer is, am I smart enough right now to be able to do better with the money than I was when I acquired the property in the first place? You ask yourself those 3 questions, and if it's performing as intended, and if it's going to continue performing as intended, and I'm not smart enough, then it's really easy. I keep it. Right? If it's performing as intended, it's going to continue performing as intended, but hey, now I've got more skills than when I first bought it, and I can actually reapply that and buy in a better area, or now I can actually force value, then I might not need to sell it today, but I know that I have the option to sell it if it's going to enable me to do the next thing. If it's not performing as intended, and it's got no chance of actually turning around, then whether I'm smart enough or not, do I want to choose to lose a finger rather than losing an arm? Right? And so I think most people with the buy and hold approach, they think time is the forgiver of all things. If they hold on long enough, it's going to double in value, right? But that doesn't work everywhere. And if you don't assess that along the way, you're going to find that that asset is going to be an anchor around your neck. Now, when you make that determination, you're going to find some assets are performing really, really well. Some assets are not performing really well. Kill the ones that aren't. They probably had some capital growth. That capital growth will pay down the debt on the ones that are performing well. Now those ones are going to be owned outright. Now you're still able to keep them and grow in value, but now they're cash flow positive and you haven't got that anchor around your neck. And now you're immune to interest rate rises because you don't have a debt. That's if you're a passive, not advice, asterisk, not advice.
Right, we always say this chat is general in nature. So look, we'll put that caveat there. But to your point, when people go, has it done what it's intended to? And like, it's not ready. It hasn't gone yet. And it's almost like if I sell, I'll have seller's remorse. And it's, I'm going to hold on because it's just not its time to shine yet. And then 10 years time, they'll come back going, see, I sold it far too soon. And in their mind, they're going, I should have held on to it. And I don't know, what do you say to someone that has seller's remorse or may think that they'll have seller's remorse?
Look, you can equally have seller's remorse for buying the wrong asset. And I think the mistake happens by not actually reviewing and making informed decisions. So if you make an informed decision, then you're making a decision based on the best information available to you at that point in time. And so we don't have the benefit of having a crystal ball, okay? I noticed both of us have got the same crystal ball. We don't have the benefit, but we can minimize our risk on all of those things. Warren Buffett famously says that risk only comes from not knowing what you're doing. So educate yourself and make informed decisions, okay? I can give a really simple analogy. When we were kids, we were told that crossing the road was dangerous. But then we were told if you look left, look right, look left, you can navigate that traffic safely. Now, the risk hasn't changed. That car is still dangerous. It's still going to kill you, but we know now how to identify the risk, put a management plan in place, and then manage the plan because we're watching the car before we actually cross. We want to do exactly the same in the property world, and we want to say, what are the risks? How do I identify them? How do I put a management plan in place? How do I manage the risk? And if we do that, we can start to make very, very well informed decisions on how to better our life.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. Now, at the start, you said this is a great time to be a property developer, and where I sit, and a lot of people listening going, every other week I'd read there's another builder that's gone down in WA, for example, reading about the amount of builders that are going into voluntary administration, for example. I read recently building approvals are now at their lowest levels since February 2013. But you're kind of going against the grain here and going, actually, this is a good time. Take me through what is your view at the current moment with the building industry, and then being able to move into property development, mate?
So there's two parts to what you just said there. So there's the health of the building industry, and then there's the supply and demand ratio. So you just identified that building approvals are at the lowest that they've ever been.
Yeah.
Which means that the supply is the lowest it's ever been. Our population growth is the highest it's ever been. Our international migration is bringing in, I think this year we're projected at 500,000 people a year, but we haven't got the supply in the market. That disconnect is opportunity. Now, when you actually, and that's just two of the drivers I look at. There's 16 drivers I look at. When you look at those two just in isolation, we can see that there's a massive number of people needing to have a roof over their head, and there's just no roofs. Now, population growth in Australia is predominantly from inception. We are a country of migrants. International migration is where our population growth has come from. Despite the fact that I'm a white man, my family's a migrant, right? And the majority of us that have come here are that. So a property developer's role is to actually look at the demand that's coming in, identify where the demand is going, what the demand is actually looking for, the product type and putting the opportunity in front of them at the exact moment that they actually need it. So that is the point of a property developer. So Australia, I think, is around about 240 years old, give or take. I don't know the math. But all the way back then, we were a one-lot land subdivision. Every house that we've got, every school, every road, every hospital, every shopping centre was built by a property developer understanding that supply and demand dynamic and putting the right solution in front of people at the right time. And that is our job, is to identify where the population's going and what that population's looking for. Are they aging in place? Are they young families needing something with a backyard? If we get the right product mix in the right place, mate, there's gold in them Dar Hills.
Yeah, okay, cool. So what are you seeing at the moment that's kind of like really hitting a sweet spot? There's got to be some projects that you think that are when you talk about the right place, the right time, the right research, for example, what are you seeing that's kind of yielding some strong results in your community?
Look, most of our guys are small scale, guys and girls are small scale mum and dad developers. So their resources aren't to build Meriton Towers, right? So most of them are looking at small scale infill development type projects, okay? Now, where the big guys get all the kudos, what most people don't realise is that the small scale projects are 6-pack and below. When you look at every council around the country, anywhere between 80 and 90% of all development applications are a 6-pack and below. That is exactly what our community is actually building. So doing a 1-into-2 or a duplex or a 3-pack or a 4-pack of townhouses, that is the bread and butter that is building this nation by filling in the gaps in the big backyards that the baby boomers, they bought those homes way back when the great Aussie dream was a big backyard. Those baby boomers now can't look after that big backyard. They're wanting to downsize. They're wanting to get rid of that. And everyone else is wanting to live in the same location that the boomer did because they want to be close to work. They want to be close to shops. They want to be close to transport. So it's a generation moving out and a different generation moving in, and we're filling in the gaps. So now councils don't need to build new roads. They don't need to build new sewer and stormwater and all that bit of infrastructure. So filling in the gaps using existing infrastructure, that's where the opportunity is.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. And then, so you talk about the mum and dad or their smaller style developers, for example, without the bells and whistles. So who is property development for? Like, take me through, if someone's listening and they're going, Rob, how do I get in? For example, I'm a salaried role. I've got maybe a couple of properties under my belt, for example. How do I dip my toe in this water without getting burnt? And how do I make a successful transition into property development? What does that pathway look like?
Mate, that is a fantastic question. And probably the most important part is property development is a career in itself, and it needs to be treated as a career and as a business. And so nobody goes and starts up shop without doing all their homework and actually get themselves, educate themselves on the process. So you need to learn what it is that you want to do first. Hang around communities like Property Developer Network, come to our regular meetups, learn what is possible. Hang around with people who are actually doing it. Understand what kind of development strategy I might want to do, then start to research what that looks like. We've got 12 years of back catalogue of recordings and presentations of people presenting real deals exactly like the one that you're thinking of doing. Go and look at that back catalogue and learn from the lessons of other people and start to go, is this for me, right? Have I got the time? Have I got the energy, the drive to actually put this in place? And then when you do, lock in your development strategy first, and then learn that one like hell. Become a strategy expert. Based on that strategy expert, you then want to become an area expert where that strategy is starting to work. And then based on that, you then start to farm those areas, okay? So I say one council, one strategy, 3 suburbs. And 3 suburbs sounds like, why would you narrow yourself down that far? We want 3 suburbs with lots of opportunity, lots of evidence of other people doing it, lots of proof point that those people are profitable, and enough demand that we can still do it, because we only need one deal. And a lot of us are looking at hundreds of strategies in hundreds of places, and we spread ourselves very, very, very thin. So we are mile wide and inch deep. Whereas I say, turn around, you want to be inch wide and mile deep. And if you can do that, you're going to start to be able to assess deals like this, right? In 10 minutes, I can assess whether or not a deal is a deal or not. Now, that takes a lot of education to get to the point of being able to make that decision. But that, if you front load that effort, you will also be able to make decisions real fast.
I appreciate that. And that's generally a lot of people get stuck, which is, okay, how do I assess it? Because we've got clients that come to us and we've got numbers on spreadsheets, and it's like they just can't get this deal to stack up. And it's like, what are they missing here? Because there's 2 things we can certainly be guaranteed of at the moment. It's cost blowout and time blowout. And it's how do we factor that in? What contingencies we're building that in as well? So when you say, look, I can do this in 10 minutes, what is your trained eye looking for? Not only the opportunity, but then through the numbers to go, we can actually make a profit, because that's the only reason you're doing this, which is to bank some profit.
Absolutely. And the key to this is that most people are doing the process backwards. Most people are choosing the area and then trying to ram the strategy in. Whereas I go the other way around. I choose the strategy and go, where does that strategy work? Where does that deal size work? And so I'm going into areas where there's lots of probability that is actually going to be the case, as opposed to an area that's just around the corner because I'm familiar with it, right? And if I do my approach, the effort at the front is high, but the success at the back is higher. If we do the alternative approach, the activity is high, the excitement is high, we're looking at lots of things, but we start banging our head up against a wall going, I can't get it to stack, it doesn't work, and we don't understand why that's the case. And it's because, I guess at a very simplistic level, there's a development life cycle that every area goes through. So it's a bell curve. So nobody's doing anything. People start investigating, goes all the way up, everything's profitable, then it doesn't work anymore, and then everybody gets out of Dodge. And so chances are we're in an area that's at the wrong point in the life cycle. Okay. So if I break that life cycle down into its small elements, nobody doing a deal, then one person speculates. I'm going to call this guy the market maker. So he's got no evidence of anyone ever doing this before. He's either very well informed and taking a very well-educated decision, or he's just some random guy rolling the dice and hoping. Either way, he's the one who's determining what that finished product is going to sell for and whether or not there's somebody who wants that. Then a whole bunch of savvy developers watch that person make money, and I'm going to call them the early adopters. So they button in and they go, okay, he made money. Chances are we will too. Now, these are well-educated, well-informed people who are, I guess, copying other people, but they're educated enough to go, look, it's risky, but I'm de-risking myself somewhat with my knowledge and skills. Then what happens is Joe Public gets involved. Joe Public sees all this activity and Joe Public starts piling in. Now they're emotional, they're ill-informed. They go, well, those guys are making money. I'm going to make money too. And they start paying way too much for an area. Then it starts paying too much and then nothing starts to work. And then everybody gets out of Dodge. So you see activity on the way up, you see activity on the way down. As a matter of fact, if you are seeing heaps of activity in your area, you are probably somewhere near the top and maybe on the back side of the curve. So you want to be on the front side of the curve. So activity does not equal profit. So the key is you want to see the early adopters getting in, and you want to get in before too many Joe Publics get in. That sweet spot, that if you find that window, and in our program that I guess where we educate people, we call that the suburb selection process. When you get that, almost everything in the area is a winner. You can buy on average, run an average deal, sell on average, and pretty much walk away with a deal without having to beat up a little old lady and buy under market.
Okay, thanks very much. One, you mentioned there around the suburb selections, one of your courses or one of those topics that you walk people through as well. One of the other ones that I saw as well is the psychology of property development is something else that you offer. Now, that's an interesting one because most people go, I'm showing up. That means I'm ready to be a property developer, and I feel like there's something different going on here under the hood of this particular course. So take me through, what are you unpacking here when it talks about the psychology of a property developer?
Mate, that is an amazing question, and most people don't even think about their mindset. Mindset is 50% of this. We can learn the skills, but unless we actually believe, unless we believe in ourselves, we put all these mental roadblocks and mental hurdles in our way. We are going to make mistakes. We're going to make lots of mistakes on this journey. Okay.
And these mistakes
what we're wanting to do is
as well, right?
we're wanting to do that in a safe way. We want to fail safely and fail falling forward, which means we have to put ourselves in a position where we're prepared to fail. And that plays an incredible mental game on us. I don't know how to do a site analysis at the moment. I don't know how to do a feasibility. I've got to learn those things. And when I go into an area and choose an area, if I'm wasting time on the wrong area, that's a failure. But the only day I lose money is when I get into a shitty deal. So I want to fail, lose. Is this a good area? No. Okay, I'm going to go find another area. Is this a shitty area? No. Let's go to another area. Then yes, I've got that. Now let's start doing site assessments. Can I do my site assessment right? And you're going to make lots of mistakes on that. Can I get my feasibility right? Going to make lots of mistakes on that. Do I get my negotiations right? Going to make lots of mistakes on that. Eventually we get a deal. But along the way, we've failed many, 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 many times. And so the mindset side and the tricks that we play on ourselves to say, I'm not good enough, I'm not capable, and I don't want to do that. The mindset is at least 50% of this.
Yeah, okay. And then what part does luck play in it? In the other 50%, and what part does the other part is taking action. So you can have the right mindset, then you got to pull the trigger and take some action as well. Is there an element of luck, do you think?
I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to qualify that.
Okay.
So my definition of luck is where opportunity presents itself to preparation. So if you put the effort in to actually educate yourself, and you've put yourself in the position where you're going to have lots of opportunities actually start to come to you, then the opportunity was always there, but now you're prepared to recognize it and act on it. And there's opportunities everywhere all the time. But if we are not prepared to see the opportunity, it just goes whizzing past us. And so there's lots of people who are lucky because they worked bloody hard to get themselves in a position to know what to do to recognize that was going past.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. I want to go all the way back to the very start, which is when you said I have 16 market drivers, whereas most people are looking at lag factors like days on market or auction clearance rates, for example. So take me through, I'm not sure you can recite all 16 off the top of your head, but what are you looking for? What's on that driver's checklist?
So, and I might miss one or two, but fundamentally there's 4 key areas that then have subsets within them. So I guess you've got government incentives. Okay, so that's one key area. So within that, you've got where is government spending major infrastructure projects? What are they doing for incentives and bonuses? Are they doing building bonuses, and are they doing first homeowners grants and all those sorts of things? What are they doing to incentivize the market to actually move? Okay, now governments spend billions and billions and billions of dollars building road networks, rail networks, hospitals, schools, all those, like they spend billions of dollars activating an area. Now, when they activate an area, when they spend those billions of dollars, they employ lots of jobs. Those people who are working, building those things, start to spend money in that local economy. In that local economy, they now spend money at the fish and chip shop, they spend money at the newsagent, they spend money at Coles and Bunnings and a whole bunch of other things. So now all of those businesses can now afford to employ someone. So then those people start spending money, and so then again, the business is reinforced. It's called trickle-down economics. So when you understand trickle-down economics and where the money is being spent, you can see what they're doing is they're actually activating an area, and they're dragging people there. So as they start to drag people there, then all of a sudden people want to live close to where they work. And when they want to live close to where they're going to have to build somewhere close to. So when you see the money spent, 2 or 3 years later, you're going to start to see a whole bunch of activity in that area with regards to, hey, people want to live here. Right, so that's number one, government incentives. Number 2, population growth. So there's births, deaths, and marriages. That's pretty much flatline. That's not doing much. There's intrastate. So city moving out to regional moving back into the city. Majority of the time, that is neutral. During COVID, that was a lot of people leaving the city and going regional, but we're back to neutral again. There's interstate migration. So people leaving one state and going to another. So a lot of people leaving Sydney and Melbourne because they can't afford to live there anymore, and they're going to places like Brisbane, to Adelaide, and to Perth. Okay, so you're going to see that interstate migration happen. But by far the biggest one, international migration. So where are the people actually coming from? They're predominantly coming from overseas. But when you start to put all of those together, they start to, I guess, have a huge force. Then you've got your supply and demand. Now, supply and demand looks at, and this is where we started on this, what is the number of development approvals happening in an area? Now, development approval is the potential for supply. It's not an actual supply. So it is, hey, council's approved that this thing can be built, but many times it doesn't actually get built. And usually because financially it doesn't make sense, or it was the wrong development approval, or that particular person who did the DA doesn't have the cash to actually execute it. Then from there, you've then got your building approvals. So this is now they've taken it to the next stage and they're ready to construct, but they haven't yet constructed. Then there's actually commencements, and then so that all of those dynamics, when you start to see it, as a little bit like lots of opportunity and go down. Now, at the moment, there's a massive, massive, massive undersupply. Okay, and that's because COVID had a false recession. So in that false recession, you'd remember that we were all told that property markets might drop anywhere between 20 and 30%. So no developer in his right mind is going to buy a property with the opportunity to lose 30%. It's not going to happen. So there was no development approvals that happened in that time, or very limited. So the potential supply dropped massively. Then the building boom happened. So all the false I guess, boom. So all the government incentives said, housing, go build. So every builder on earth started constructing. So all the potential development approvals all got consumed and constructed very, very fast. So, but because it was taking off at such a rapid rate of knots, people didn't get in again to put more supply in because they didn't know where the end was going to happen. They couldn't afford to get in. Okay, they didn't know when the boom was going to end. So you've got this window of massive undersupply, right? That massive undersupply has hit at a point where we've now got the population growth starting to go through the roof. That disconnect is massive, right? Then we come to our fourth driver, which is affordability, okay? And the affordability comes into what's our inflation rate, what's our interest rates, and what are the RBA and APRA, I guess, macroprudential decisions that are actually determining, can we actually get into the market in the first place? So while we've got high inflation, then that makes things like rents go up. So that's a massive leading indicator. Yeah. When we have international migration come in, for the first 2 years, they're not allowed to buy. Yeah. So they are going to go into that rental market, which puts heaps of pressure on that rental market. So the rental market has gone through the roof. And we've got now interest. So the inflation starting to come down, that's controlled by interest rates. So as interest rates start to come off, it's actually going to start to become very, very attractive to get out of the rental market and into actually owning a home again, because it'll be pretty soon be cheaper to actually own than it will be to rent. Okay. And that switch is not that far away. Now, we might not be renting the same size product versus what we buy, right? Because people are starting to downsize a lot more. But so you're seeing the infill development start to take up large parcels of land and create much, much smaller product. But more people are actually going to start to say, well, I'm happy to live in a townhouse. I'm happy to live in an apartment because I can at least own that as opposed to renting and paying someone else's mortgage. Yeah. So we're not far away from that litmus test, from that switch being flicked, where the interest rates are going to start to come off. And all of the big four banks are saying it's somewhere between September and November that we're going to start to see our first rate drops. At that point, because of the demand that's coming into the market, people are going to be able to start to have more borrowing capacity and more ability to buy.
That's exactly it. You overlay that with, say, stage 3 tax cuts, and you go, right, the second half of this year will be where it starts to kind of kick up again. I mean, we're already seeing people that are getting ahead of that curve going, I don't want to swim at the sharks then, so that they're buying now in anticipation of future rate cuts and stage 3 tax cuts as well, which will stack up, people be able to borrow more. And I definitely see the way that you've built that framework. It kind of does fit into I guess your model there as well. I think it's excellent, mate. Thank you very much. I really appreciate every time you jump on. There's so much I feel like my head is spinning. People listening to this will then just like their mind will be going into 6th and 7th gear, mate, which will naturally then say, how do they get in touch with you, and what does working with yourself and your team look like, mate? What does that engagement entail?
Look, we run, so firstly, if they search for Property Developer Network, they'll see us, both our website, that we'll see our Facebook communities, and also see the events that we run all the way around the country, and also some YouTube pages. So there's heaps of different ways of actually engaging with us. We run events in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. We run them physically, where you turn up to the room, and we also live stream them. So no matter where you are, you can actually turn up to an event pretty much every week of the year. They are as little as $25 to turn up to one of those. So, very affordable, very, very educational and very informative. We run YouTube channels where they can consume content for free. And all of that is to help people to actually understand that this is within their grasp, within their reach, and give them an appetite that this is something they actually want to do. If they get to the point where they go, hey, I'd like to actually do something about that, we then have some formal education where we can actually teach them step by step exactly what to actually look for. But most people, they need to actually just immerse themselves in a community of people that are actually doing it to find out if it's the right place for them. So that's where I'm going to encourage most people to start. So look for our YouTube channels, come to our live events.
And join the Facebook group. I've got
that's the Facebook group.
Yep. So if you take nothing away from it, joining a Facebook group costs you nothing. Attending an event takes some time and a very, very small amount of money. But you're going to be around a like-minded community, and that's what we're about. So the people that reach out, a lot of the people that reach out off the back of these podcasts are driven, ambitious, want to change their family's future, want to change the way they look for retirement as well, and want to build a very strong asset position. So that's you, and I feel like the people that come out of the back of the podcast tick all those boxes as well. Do yourself a favor. Do what we said. Join the Facebook group. Go to an event. Sink your teeth into all the free resources on YouTube. We'll include details and links to do that as well. And if you're then at that point, once you've done that, then you move to the next step, which is maybe joining and taking part in a course as well. So stepping stones. And this is, I mean, from our own personal journey, like you're saying, if I can just get to that next step and what you're saying, it's in my reach and my grasp, if you can just do that, attain that, a rolling stone will gather a lot more moss as well, which is that's my mum.
Absolutely. Most people forget it takes a lot of momentum to start that rolling stone moving. But then once it's moving, it takes a lot of momentum to stop it.
There we go. And that's what it is. And by being around a community, I can't tell you the power of like playing a bigger game, right? I mean, I'm so privileged I get to speak to people like yourself. You get to give up your time and your energy and resources to share your knowledge as well. So I'm really, really appreciative of that. But then our community is the beneficiaries of that. And so what we're trying to do is just raise the bar. For people that are listening, we're like, hey, mate, let's all play a bigger game here. I win, you win, someone like yourself, Rob wins. That inspires other people to take some action as well. So the property market, you hear me say this time and time again, rewards action takers, decision makers. Our job is to be enablers of that. And if you have resonated with this episode, I'd love to hear from you. The questions that we're getting that people are sending to our DMs, I am loving it. So please, I don't care about subscribes. I don't care about reviews. I care about people dropping us messages to say they're loving it. And here's some questions they've got as well. So do us a favor, drop us a message and we'll get future questions answered as well. Hey, Rob, I want to say thank you so much for your time, your energy. I appreciate it, mate. Look forward to seeing what you're doing next as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. And bye to your listeners, mate.
Thanks, mate. That's a wrap for another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.